Hi, I'm here at the City of Thorold. My name is Reginald Angus Argue. I'm sitting here with the Chief Executive Officer of the nonprofit organization that helps children that have mental health illnesses, the Pathstone, and Ellis Katsof.
Yes.
Ellis, the first question I have to ask you, could you give us a history of the Pathstone?
Certainly, Reginald. Pathstone Mental Health started back in 1968 when a group of concerned citizens and parents got together and said there were young children in the community that needed help with their emotional behavioral problems. And Niagara Child Development Center was formed as a result of that dialogue. About 8 years later, in 1976, another group of concerned citizens and community got together and said there were also teenagers that also had the same needs as the young kids, and they formed another organization called Niagara Youth Center, Niagara NCD and NCYC. I have to remember the names; it goes back so long ago. Niagara Child Youth Center, and in 2004, these two organizations came together and formed Niagara Child and Youth Services. So suddenly there was now one children's mental health agency for children from birth to their 18th birthday. Last year, we renamed the agency to Pathstone Mental Health. And the reason we wanted to rename the agency was people weren't sure what the acronym NCYS meant. They weren't sure what Niagara Child Youth Services meant and didn't talk about what our real business was. And a lot of that was because of stigma. People were afraid that if we put mental health in the name, people wouldn't come for service. We said the best way of fighting the stigma was to be very upfront and bold and say we are a children's mental health center. So we came up with the name Pathstone, representing the path, a path of stones towards wellness, and we added mental health to it so that everyone would know we are a mental health agency and there's nothing wrong to go for help.
And the question I have to ask you, well, what is mental illnesses?
We all get depressed sometimes, sad sometimes, all kids get anxious sometimes, or adults get anxious sometimes, and that's normal. But when an emotion gets the better of you and you don't have control over it, and it really begins to affect your day-to-day life, and you can't manage those feelings, then it potentially is a mental illness. So it's when it really affects your life so that you can get on with normal day-to-day activities, going to school, having friends, having jobs, having a family, being involved in the community. If your emotions begin to really affect you that significantly, then it could be a mental illness.
And the Rotary House that you're also involved with, could you share a little bit about the importance of that?
Certainly. We have a range of services at Pathstone Mental Health, Reginald. Most of them are out in the community, and we service probably 98% of the kids that we work with while they're still living at home or in the community. There's always a very small percentage of teenagers who sometimes need to have a residential treatment facility. They sometimes need to be living in the treatment facility away from their families for 3 to 6 months so that they have more intensive treatment to help them deal with their mental illness and help them develop strategies so that they can go back living in the community in a very successful way. Rotary House, we're really excited about, is a new facility that we built last year with the help of the Rotary clubs and other community members and other foundations in the community to help these youngsters, these young teens, deal with the mental health problems. Rotary House, it was an old house that we bought, and with the community donations, we totally renovated the entire house, and it's so that it's a really safe, comfortable place for these kids to live while they're in treatment, and before they go back to live with their families.
And what other services does your organization offer to at the same time? I noticed that there was one section that was talking about when the child goes through a divorce or the parents are going through separation.
We have a range of services. Those services for kids that are struggling with their emotions as a result of a divorce or separation is one small little group program. Our main service is to treat mental illness, and we've got 3 different streams of service. One is very, very brief. So if kids are just beginning to have emotional or behavioral problems and they're referred to us and they're assessed as not having significant problems, they would go into our brief service, and they might, the parents and the children might receive up to a maximum of 4 or 5 sessions. That's all they need, and about a third of our clients go through that stream, and that's all they need to learn more about the issues that they're dealing with and to develop strategies so that they don't affect their lives so much. Another stream is our moderate services, and that's for about 10 to 12 weeks of treatment, and we use what's called brief solution focus service. It's very focused at the problem. Often it's for kids that have a depression disorder or for anxiety or a conduct disorder where they're just acting out and they can't control their emotions and they're just acting out all over the place, and causing problems in school and in the community and at home. Another is for ADHD, attention deficit disorder, hyperactive disorder, and we will have special groups to help children learn strategies to deal with their mental illness, and parents are also in a group at the same time, separate group, and they're learning in those groups all about the mental illness their kids have and how can they reinforce the positive strategies that the kids are learning, so that when they finish the group after 10 or 12 weeks, they can function more comfortably with their mental illness and doesn't interfere with their day-to-day lives afterwards. The final stream is intensive services. That's for kids usually that have 2 or more problems, and they're often in service for a year or longer, and that's about a third of our clients. And we have a variety of intensive treatment services. We have one-to-one therapy. We have special programs for kids that might be setting fires or might be hurting other people in one way or the other, or just hurting themselves. And that's a more intensive treatment program. We have some programs for kids that have difficulty talking. Often when a child has been a victim of abuse or of a very traumatic event that's really affected their emotions, and if they're younger, they have real difficulty talking about it. We have a play therapist and an art therapist, and they use either play for really young kids or art for older kids to help them begin to explore their feelings and their emotions and begin eventually verbalizing them and talking about them so that they can then begin the healing process. So there's a variety of services that we provide.
And with, I think you were mentioning out there on the poster, 1 in 5 children have mental illnesses. And reading an article last night that it talked something about 18,000 children within the Niagara, I think it's Niagara region. What I'd like to know is, how can we end the stigmatism of the society has towards individuals that seek out help, right, in order to help out the 1 in 5 children that are desperately in need of help at this time?
It's a real challenge. Changing community attitudes is what ending stigma is all about. And those attitudes have been around a long time. If you go back to the 1800s, the first hospital in Ontario for mental health was called the Insane Asylum. So that's where the stigma comes from. Years and years of stigma. Many people think that if you have a mental illness, you're crazy, you're dangerous, you're homicidal, you're homeless, you're unemployed. Those are all myths. They're not facts. A tiny, small percentage of people who have a mental illness might be dangerous. The vast majority of people are like you and me and everyone else. They come from all walks of life. Mental illness is like cancer. It doesn't discriminate. You can be someone who unfortunately is unemployed for whatever reason, or you can be a doctor or a politician or a teacher, social worker, from every walk of life, an engineer, police officer, every walk of life, you can be affected. 1 in 5 people, children and adults and seniors, will have a mental illness. And the most common mental illnesses for adults are depression and anxiety. The most common mental illnesses for kids are depression and anxiety, and ADHD and conduct disorder. Nothing mysterious about it, and all treatable successfully. The way to get back to your question, the way we deal with stigma is to educate the public about what mental illness really is. All it is an illness of the brain. Just like you have diabetes, if you have lung problems, if you have a broken leg, mental illness is just another illness. And it's treatable, like all other illnesses are. And like other illnesses, if you treat it early, it's easier to deal with. If you live with it for years and then treat it, it's much harder to deal with. We know if you have diabetes and you ignore it for years, it takes a real toll on your body, and the same thing with mental illness. If you treat it young and early, it's much easier for the individual to develop strategies to deal with it. And the importance of that is 70% of all mental illness begins during childhood and adolescence. But many people wait until they're adults and they're really having difficulty with their mental illness before they get help.
Well, you have that 2-part YouTube on your website. Right? There's a principal who's come out now and talked about how her mental illness, and she said something extremely touching during her speech, and she's talking about a 32-year-old teacher that tragically took her own life, and yet she left, this teacher left young children and family that's caring. You know, the question I have is, to individuals that are in that situation, that, you know, how can we reach them before they take that step to tear themselves from society?
Suicide is a really big problem in our society and ties right into stigma. People are afraid to get help, they don't think it will help, and they're hurting so much, and they just want the pain to end, and sometimes they see taking their life as a solution when it's not. When there are other solutions, and part of the challenge of dealing with suicide is to break through the stigma around mental illness and help people realize there is help there, and there is an end to the pain if you reach out and ask for help. That was a very tragic story, and there are stories like that, unfortunately, all the time. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 18-year-olds in our society, and that's really tragic. It's lives that are lost that don't need to be. And part of our anti-stigma campaign is we've just joined in Niagara with our Suicide Prevention Coalition to increase the dialogue about suicide prevention and to encourage people to reach out for help. Help is there, and it's waiting. For instance, in Niagara, we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week crisis line that people can call if they're really feeling desperate and they want help. So help is always there. We just need to encourage people to reach out for it.
And your website?
Our website is pathstonementalhealth.ca.
And are there any final thoughts that you wish to share?
I really appreciate you coming and talking with me, Reginald. It's what we're trying to do is getting the word out about mental health, and encouraging parents and kids to say if they're not happy, if they're concerned about the way they're feeling, come in for a checkup, just to make sure that there's not some help that they can get so they can feel better and get on with their life, enjoy life. Life is too short for it to be encumbered and bothered because you might have a problem with depression or anxiety. You can learn to live with it and get over that and get on with life and really enjoy it. So reach out and ask for help.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Dallas.
Thank you so much for yours.